Good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started with the City Utilities Committee meeting, February 13th. I'm J.P. Matzakite, Chair of the Utilities Committee. To my right is Council Member Young, and to his right is Council Member Smith. To my left is Council Member Shook, and to his left is Council Member Shepard. One thing with the agenda, we are going to shift the presentations until the end, so they'll come before the comments from the public. So we'll make that change. We have a second, a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. 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 Any opposed? Second, move approval of the minutes. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? So approved. Next item is the 2018 City Utilities Committee goals and objectives. Do we have that, Santana?
Yes, they are in everyone's packet.
Great. Thank you. It's the last page of the packet here. I'm going to go ahead and read them for you all so that you can hear them as well. These are the draft goals. To review the most recent employee evaluations within the departments of purview. Conduct follow-up reviews of previous department audits, specifically follow-up on the water loss audit from April of 2017. Be fully engaged in most renewal discussions. To continue discussions on solid waste services. To track budget and monitor cash flow and debt, taking into consideration need for stormwater improvements, stormwater infrastructure maintenance, and maintaining water rates. That's with the capital improvement plan. To continue to monitor water quality to ensure the city has ample and high quality water. Successful implementation of the public access channel television contract. And to review end-to-end customer service process of the 311 Department of Public Works and Department of Watershed Management to ensure seamless accountability and high customer satisfaction. We have a motion to adopt and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it, and that the goals are adopted then. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the public comment. Is anyone signed up for public comment? All right, we have a couple of folks signed up. Patricia Creighton, you have 3 minutes, please.
To D. Jones Productions through the procurement office that I feel is tainted and under investigation still. And as I've read her proposal, she did not complete all the forms. Part 2 states that all forms should be completed in its entirety, and they weren't. And she did not complete Form 2. Part A and B was left blank. Also, on the disclosure statement, question number 13 asked if there was any type of business being done by anybody from the city, a political office, or employee that she had done. She stated no. And up until November 2017, on her webpage, it stated otherwise. I intend to forward this information on to the authorities to investigate further, as I said, with the procurement office that is already under investigation, and hope that in this process, People TV will definitely be put in a place where it should, because the world is watching, as everybody says in their speeches, and this is the attempt to silence the public, I feel, and I'm not going to, as president and as a citizen, and as been at the station since 1987 with Reverend Hosea Williams, on up through the ranks, just as a co-host and now producer through the years, and president board, now I feel that the creator himself put me in this position to not let it be closed as it would have been with my predecessors with their plans to close the station, and I will not do that. And also in the questions that were submitted with the proposal, one of them was, what have been the biggest 3 challenges expressed by the team currently holding the contract over the past 3 years? The city stated with the answer, I don't know who it was, the city has not been aware of any significant challenges faced by the current provider. Saying in and of that, we have provided service to the city for over 32 years. And I just curious to know how many of the council people actually watch the channel to see the improvements that we've done. We've actually implementing our bid as we speak on things that we said we were going to do. We are doing it. The bid was awarded in November. This is February, and we have not heard a word. And that in and of itself holds a business back from trying to progress and better themselves. Let me see what else I've got on my list.
Ms. Creighton?
Yes.
Thank you for those comments.
I'm not finished. I still got some time left, don't I?
No,
almost over.
you're over.
I'm so sorry.
No problem. And we are going to have a presentation on this at the end of the meeting.
Okay, I just hope you guys are aware of these things that I stated that's illegal.
Mr. Shakir?
Good morning. Ryan Shakir, Southwest Atlanta. Majority of mayors in recent history have come from the 11th district or bordered to the 10th district because some changes has been made. That was the 11th, now it's the 10th. But that's where the majority in recent history the mayors have come from. And it has caused us a continuation of being discriminated against because we have been a dominant African American community. Too often, Atlanta Life or Atlanta Forward or Progress or Splosh this and that is passed by a majority of African Americans. However, when you put on to-do lists, African Americans basically hold up one position, and that's the bottom as far as getting services. Last hired, first fired, that kind of same kind of theme. But for the services, Brother Muhammad, which he has spoke on, is in the order. It's always jumped upon and presented in our community to vote on it, but the services don't come. So it's something that now we're in Black History Month, that we got to understand the real contributions that blacks, African Americans have gave to this city and to this country and to the world. And given some and more greater respect therefore of the woman movement, the call for freedom, the call for justice. I don't care whether you might have been Jewish, female, or Indian, or Oriental. The African American voice have shaped the call of freedom and justice in a way that has been basically nonviolent and has been embracing. And we have benefited the city in any capacity that we have worked on because of that. But you see a shrinking of black presence today because of policies that we are adapting, like gentrification, school closing, the gathering, the merging of schools, without no consideration of the impact of these things. In the terrible presence what the streetcar and the Beltline has meant to African American community have yet to be sincerely measured. But I would hope that you would start measuring these here, elected officials, because in this utilities, it has been suggested, and I was the one who suggested it, that we post the work that's being done on our streets. On Cascade Road in the 10th and the 11th, you had the streets have been disrupted now for about almost 2 months. And I had my tires balanced. And now they're out of balance because we constantly got to deal with this. Because we're dealing with priorities that does not address fairness or what the community is really calling for. The fake news, the fake priorities like a bike lane, it's constantly, and we're financing this organization called the Studio, and we got a few people, Mr. Mesticott, that come to meetings and are not able to express themselves. The freedom of being able to talk and be a part of these meetings and development is constantly shrunk. And I would hope that you would stand up for the First Amendment, stand up for the fact that what we ask for and have a request for our representatives and our taxpayer money be applied fairly and justly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shakir. Adrian Coleman Tyler.
Good morning. I first want to thank you, Chairman Mazakite, for adding to the agenda today the Public Access Channel Transition Update. I think it's important to keep that before the Utilities Committee. December 4th, Atlanta City Council voted 10-1 to approve Resolution 17R4674, where you assigned the operation of the public access channel to a sole proprietor, D. Jones Production. That was the last vote of the year, and other than questions put forth by Councilwoman Shepherd and Felicia Moore, it was voted in haste. You did that. You voted for it. I'm here today because throughout that whole process, since 2016, when the mayor's office first started talking about putting up an RFP for public access, in large measure, the city, the communities were excluded. There was no surveys. There was no nothing. I was one who was supportive of an RFP if it was going to be done, for example, like San Francisco, that took a year to do an assessment, did community surveys, engage, and really put forth a strategy of what the public access system should transition to. In 2017, I came before the Utilities Committee to ask the question, how do you measure the success of the public access system? Where's the metrics? Where are we trying to go with this? I think that it's time and that it's worth the investment. So I'm here today. You made a decision, you voted, and you selected a sole proprietor to run a non-commercial public access station. Since 1980, in 1980, when cable first came to the city of Atlanta, there was a Citizen Advisory TV Board. This is the predecessor to People TV. At that time, the cable company ran the public access system, the cable company. And the legislators at that time set up a Citizen Advisory Board. In 1985, when it transitioned in 1985, City Council then told the Citizen Advisory Board to set up a nonprofit that became People TV. Then People TV's board became that advocate group, and it still exists on the city's board website now as a public board. I'm here today because you have, in that vote, 10-1, you have dismantled over 30 years of a legislative framework that protected the public access channel, and in essence, what you did was took People TV and made it Person TV, because right now there is a sole person that you allocated this resource for. And in doing so, we no longer have the protections of transparency. For example, People TV is required, any public board, you know this, any public board must do audits, must do annual budgets, do annual report audits, put board budgets. They must come before the council, whichever committee has purview, and come to you. That's all done. So the last budget that we will see for this new institution, which I received through open records, this is the budget that was submitted in the proposal for the winning proponent. Out of $180,000, $151,000 is going towards salaries. Over the course of the lifetime of the 3-year contract, the owner of the company has set up that they will pay themselves $60,000 a year or $180,000 over the course of the lifetime of this contract. I think there's a problem for council when you're voting on something and you don't have all the facts. I'll be back after the presentation. Thank you so much.
Next presentation is on the public access channel transition update. Ms. Taylor Parks.
Morning. Katrina Taylor Parks, Deputy Chief of Staff, Mayor Bottom's office. And I understand that it's on the agenda as a presentation. I'm going to call it a response based on, I think, the questions the chairman sent over. Also wanted to quickly, got a good view, refute some of the items that were said earlier today, starting with, I think, the one that sticks out with me around, well, first of all, let me say that from the mayor's office, the current and new contract has been executed. The mayor has signed it. It comes over to the clerk's office. That process was a fully competitive bid process, and procurement can provide you all of those details and the timeline. The first thing I want to say is that People TV, as we know it, I think one of their participants talked about an audit, and over the last 7 years, not including 2018 yet, the previous administration under Mayor Reed gave a total of $1.2 million to an entity that we know as People TV. And that was done through a budget process, starting with FY12, $180,000, FY13, $175,000, FY14, $175,000, FY15, $150,000, FY16, $175,000, FY17, $175,000, totaling $1.2 million. And so when someone mentioned audit that we've never seen, it's a problem. When someone talks about a budget in a proposal, when we have never gotten a real budget, we got what I would call a template that, you know, with 15 lines on it that said this is where the money went. And I would take part of the responsibility because I was given this project, did not solicit for it, but I was given this project, and I worked and dealt with the council at the time to get funds so that they could continue. One of the contingencies that we actually put on camera, that I said on camera, was that they would leverage resources, they would solicit money, they would work on certain things. And so over the course of 7 years, if you're awarded $1.2 million and you're still in the same spot, then that's a problem for me. For me, that is one. And so even though we've tried to be gracious, we've been attacked. They come up and say they didn't get the $15,000 a month on time, all of these things. And so we opened a process. We created a process that everyone would have a competitive bid. And I'm going to go back now to over 30 years ago. And unfortunately, the primary attorney that worked on this, Rhonda, she's out with the flu. Her secondary was Martin. He's out with the flu. But they still have a great working team. And so just for a quick recap, if you go back to the 1980s and when I think Maynard Jackson initially did this and wanted to make sure that there was public access made available to the citizens and constituents of Atlanta, that's how it started. Shortly after that, you may remember Media One, which is now Comcast/Xfinity. They had an agreement with the city because they were using our right-of-way. And so through their application fees, their permitting fees, that is how we originally had the pot of money to fund public access television. And at the time, it was known as People TV. One of the things, and I think we gave it to this committee, was that it was created through a resolution. It was so old, it was still typed, right? And so it was done through a resolution, not an ordinance. But that is how that operation was funded. Fast forward to 2009, and the state actually changed their law. What the state did was that they made it available because it was several franchisees, Comcast, I guess, Scanner, whomever used the right-of-way. The state law authorized a statewide application fee, which is where the revenue was coming from for the city. And all of the telecom companies chose to go with the state, with the exception of Comcast. They stayed and they kept a relationship with the city. And within the depths of that state law, it would tell you that there was not an obligation to fund People Television or public access television, right? So the city kept it going up until a point. Everyone knew we went through the recession. in, mid 2000, you come up to 2009, post the election, 2010, Mayor Reed gets in. I think People TV at the time was struggling, and conversations probably started about early 2011, which is where we get to the budget, the fiscal budget of FY12, where we started giving money. But there were robust conversations. We were following an old ordinance that kept the structure in place and did all of that, but there was nothing that codified their existence as it was. The board, it was hard to populate. Yes, from the administration side, when we would send people, we nominated people, they went through the process. Some people would walk away, hands up, I'm done. Some people tried to stay, they changed leadership. We worked with the leadership, great, they started off great. Here we are today, we opened it up for a competitive process because we're talking about public dollars. And so we were asked by this body and others, what are you going to do? How will you handle this? Because everybody, I think, was exhausted with the same story coming up. We don't have, what about us, I'm going back to $1.2 million over the course of 7 years, and there's no accountability for that. And so with that in mind, I'm certain, as we all want to be good stewards over the people of Atlanta's dollars, we opened it, we did a competitive process, it went through. It was done twice because there were issues around it. I did not, contrary to what some people believe, I did not sit on the board. I sat with the original team as they talked about the scope, and then we removed ourselves and got an expert externally to write and talk about what People TV or what public access television should look like. Hence, this is how we got to a scope that procurement so diligently worked on and got done quickly because there was pressure coming from all ends. The administration, the council, everyone was saying, let's get this done, please, because everybody was coming up. And at this point, I think everyone that had gotten on the microphone made it clear that there was no contract and that we were really authorizing dollars by which we had no control to do so. Now, that's the best way I can say that without going into further details. Now, if I were to get to the questions, I think someone else also talked about the payment or something in the contract. I'm just now looking at this because I did not sit on the board. And I know the one thing that had to be a factor in the RFP or the bid, whatever they want to call it, was that they would leverage dollars. Right? So when someone got up and said they're going to pay $60,000, they're going to do this, that's not just with the city's 180, because the truth of the matter is if you do it right, 180 is not enough, particularly in comparison to 1.2. They have to leverage. They have to do fundraisers. They have to do all of those things with tangible results, of which we've not gotten to date. And so what we can do, and again, and I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, if I'm not answering some of the questions, but I think that everything, thank you, Mr. Shook, I appreciate that. I think that everything is in the RFP, the questions, the concerns. It went through the process, and the city stands firm behind that. Law was involved, everyone was involved. And so with that being said, if there's something that I have not covered, I'm happy to try and answer that question. And so that was all I have for defense mode. Everything else will go black and white with the facts.
Ms. Shepard?
I feel like I'm always leading. But let me just say, we went through this last year. And I know Mr. Mazakite wasn't here, so I'm sure you're, well, we do go through this every year. But we did move to another level. We had a long, thoroughly vetted discussion before we voted it up last year. We had to get facts, some of the facts that you referenced last year. In terms of history, we had to go back, pull documents of history, how we got from point A to point B. And at that point, we have actually voted up a new entity to run this. And I don't know if it's going to be called People TV. I'm not sure what it's going to be called. So I don't want to reference that if that's a name that, I don't know.
It's actually public access television. That's the basic name,
Okay.
The general name across the country, public access television.
So here's where I am, is I want to know what's the next steps. I did hear Adrian in the back ask the questions. We do have a contract with someone who basically is a one person, but, well, and I don't know, I see you shaking your head. So let me just say this. What I want as a result of this, and we may want to put this on our list again, Mr. Mazakite, for this year, to come up with a process of how are we going to morph this new entity into something that is accountable to the council and to the people. And I would say to that point that, and Ms. Parks-Taylor, I'm not sure who is going to be working internally with the city, because I don't believe that one individual should be the entity that's saying this is what we're going to do. It should be one where we sit with either a committee should be formed or something that would literally say, here is what we want to see happen. We can get neutral people. We don't have to have the same people that's screaming and hollering and, and having disagreements. I believe that we should have an arbitrary situation where some of those people can be at the table, but how do we move forward with this new contract? Can you help me?
Yes.
And I understand and just understand, and also understand what is the scope of that contract.
Right. And so, first of all, the first thing I want to address is that based on the structure and the requirements of the RFP, it's not a one-person entity. You were to list out how it was going to operate. Now, whomever owns the company, I don't know, but you have to have that person. They have administrative assistants. They have all of that. Also, there is within the scope of the contract, to your point, Ms. Shepherd, is that they have to, one, provide access, provide training, give almost first rights of refusal of access to those entities that are involved with People TV now. That was a requirement in.
Repeat that one more
so
time.
They have to give almost like first rights of refusal. So if you were a part of People TV and you still want to produce your shows and to do everything, then you have first rights of refusal to participate. Right, so they can't turn you away because you were part of People TV. This is still not a separate entity. It's public. And so to suggest that people wouldn't be able to, have access or produce shows, because that's what it's about. It's public access. And so to your question, it is open. There is a scope. We will pull it out, do the summary so that you can see that in council's infinite wisdom. Last year, you all amended the legislation that authorized the contract to require, and it may have been your amendment, to require reporting. Right? It's quarterly or 2 months. Right, it was. And so they have to come back before the council and report as soon as the contract comes out of the clerk's office or, wherever it is. They should come and present to their committee of purview as it relates to who is operating that. I'm pleased to, say that, well, over the course, we had lost the Channel 26 manager at the time who started with this. We had a great person that was interim doing a wonderful job. There has since been a new hire that actually starts tomorrow with extensive experience through CNN, CBS, all of those things that this entity will be reporting to. And so that person, that's who's going to be operating Channel 26. And that was not a part of my discussion, but I thought since you asked that question, you should know. And so...
is that person going to be working via the city? We hired them?
We hired them. So the accountability is with that they're operating and managing cable Channel 26. And so because this is part of all of our public access channels, and I'm going to go back, I know I said this, but just for others' sake, remember the city houses 5 public access channels, and it used to be 6, but because of content and other issues, we lost Fire. You remember several years ago, Fire had their own channel. I know Mr. Shook remembered that. So we lost Fire. So we have the channel for Clark AU. We have the Atlanta Public Schools channel belongs to the city. It's under our contract. We have Channel 26. We have this entity, the Public Access Channel, and Fulton County Government's channel is one of our 5.
So now under this new hire that will start tomorrow, up under that umbrella, with this new Public Access Channel be up under that? So the person who we have the contract with will be working with that person? Is that what I'm hearing?
Right. That person will be the point of contact for People TV. So they're going to be whom they talk to, who they deal with, if there are issues and or complaints. This is a contract. So it's similar to if I were to use a contract in watershed or public works. You have a manager, a person, a project manager that oversees anything that may have been done on an RFP basis. And so the owner of that contract depends on the Department of Purview. So the Department of Purview for public access television, as has been in the past, it would be the executive offices. The point person within the executive office will be the manager of Cable Channel 26, who will be an employee of the City of Atlanta.
And again, I know I'm asking questions and you all seem like y'all still working on this, but as a result of that, I would like to see some documentation of the process of how this is going to roll out in terms of people interacting with that. If I want to be on this channel, what is my process? I mean, is there,
there was a management plan in the actual contract, and that was what garnered points.
Can you send us a copy of that management plan?
Yes, definitely.
This is fresh and new. We need to kind of look over it because I don't think we're going to answer all the questions now, but can you send us a copy of it?
Yes, definitely.
And maybe as a part
and
of
it has the budget in there. It has everything. I will pull this out of the executed contract. I'm going to talk to procurement and law. We'll copy that and make sure that.
But I think for some folks in the audience, I think what I kind of heard was, what is the steps? What's the new steps? And I'm not clear about the steps either. So in terms of how do we get to these folks? What is the process? What are the steps? Mm-hmm. I mean, I need to understand that.
No, I get it.
So
and
when people
it's in
ask
there.
me, because I'll be honest with you, there's a gentleman who still supposedly is working at People TV, one employee. And I actually found that he's kind of tied to my community, my district. And he's emailed me and said, well, what's going to happen to me? I'm still here. I'm the only person. So there's a lot of layers out there that are still just kind of floating around.
Because no one could really talk because the contract had not been executed.
Right.
So I just need to say that, and even with the execution of this contract, there is a transition period between 45 days and 60 days.
So what is that
the
date?
current,
what are those days? You have those dates?
as soon as the contract is, the mayor has signed it. That's number one. And so as soon as it comes out of the clerk's office, the clerk has to stamp it and certify it. As soon as it comes out of the clerk's office, then procurement goes into distribution and they send a letter letting the person know that they have the contract. Okay. And so with that said, there is a transition period, which means that the current entity, from 45 days to 60 days, the conversations with the employee, and they still will get the money that we have allocated to operate until this goes in full force over to the new person.
So should we wait 45 days?
No, not for an update. No, I'm just saying that's a transition period to answer the questions, to talk with the people that are currently there, everything. I'm certain there's new space involved. It's a whole bunch of things. You're transitioning one from another, again, to make sure that you're not leaving a person out who is a sole employee who has been, they're obligated within that RFP to have those conversations first.
So when can we get a report back from you all in terms of the next steps?
I can have a written report to you all by Monday.
Okay, by Monday.
Yes.
I mean, but want something to the public. Am I asked? I mean,
that you'll be able to share it. Whatever it is, it'll highlight the transition. It will have the documentation that you requested. And the only reason I'm saying Monday is because, again, as soon as it comes out the clerk's office, then procurement has to do what they do to send it out.
I mean, that's fine, Miss. I don't have no problem with that. I was going to give you a couple of weeks, so I don't want.
Well, this is just a written part, and then a couple of weeks to come back, and that new entity should report back to you all's committee of purview along with the new station manager.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
I think you hear from the committee a lot of interest in this and being sure that we continue to appropriately provide public access and access for people to have their voice heard. And so that's what we really want to ensure, is that through this transition that continues to remain priority number one in making sure that there is a clear way for the public voice to be heard. So we appreciate you gathering those facts and coming back. Mr. Young.
Just quickly, People TV, do they have and do they maintain a not-for-profit status?
Over the course of the time that I've dealt with them, they have, yes, they do. The question is it the same nonprofit status that was started and the same entity? It is not. There was one, and the person that is the president had her own not-for-profit status. And so that's also important, is that the conglomerate or the entity of People TV as we knew it from 1987 to now, of course, there have been various iterations of that.
The kind of accountability that you're asking for to show a proper accounting of the use of our public funds, does that same accountability exist in how privately donated or philanthropic funds to their nonprofit? Because I'm sure whatever's happening in a well-run public broadcasting or public TV system, there's a steady flow of supporters who have consistently given and supported their programming. Does there exist what you've requested, an inventory of how dollars are being used on the public side, but also how they're being used from private donors? Does that exist?
It is a requirement in the new RFP. It is definitely a requirement to have an extensive budget and accounting for how the public dollars are used, what leverage, what dollars they raise, because that's a contingency in here. So we're not moving forward without that. I cannot say with confidence that over the past 7 years we have received that. What I have said is that when I requested it, I got a template-like form that said $15,000. These were our monthly expenditures, and that was it.
Most of the nonprofits that we engage with, there's an expectation, it has been over time, that we don't exceed certain numbers in terms of how much of those dollars from on the public side are actually being expended for salaries versus programming. And so in this new relationship, is there some level of accountability that we can expect to reveal comparable expectations where we typically don't, we frown upon uses of funds that extend beyond 15 or 20% for administrative costs, and so I'm assuming that there'll be a lot more transparency as we move forward in how our public dollars get used for programming versus salaries.
Right. There's a requirement of accountability for the dollars that are being spent. Where the distinction should be made is that there was not, and we went back and forth with this, there was not a requirement to be a nonprofit. So that's not a requirement. So those don't apply. But also it's important to note that the current entity, as we know, is People TV. They don't have a contract. Right. And so what they provided was just based on conversation. They don't have a document that codified them. So within the RFP, there is a requirement that itemizes how the dollars are spent, what you raise, but it's not based on nonprofit rules and regulations.
It's just in the world we live in nationwide, most public broadcasting relies heavily on donations and philanthropic gifts. And most of that deals with the majority of the operating funds actually come from that aspect versus public dollars. And I guess nationally the trend is there's a lot less local as well as federal government dollars that are being appropriated for public television nationwide.
Yes, sir. You're exactly right. But again, the statewide franchise agreements and other ways that monies are raised as it relates to the telecom community, they have agreements similar to what you all. So we are on an extended agreement with Comcast. And that's based on their old contract. In the new contract, we actually are asking them for a dollar amount to help sustain public access television. And so, but when we looked and we did benchmarking, for example, Philadelphia, but because that is the home of Xfinity and Comcast, then they freely fund their public access television. San Francisco, I believe that they have an agreement with a telecom. New York is another one that we have looked at across the country. We've done extensive research. And unfortunately, when I say we've done that, it brings to bear the sadness as to how we had been operating as a city. And so in doing so, what Mayor Reed tried to do was to provide resources at the time so that there could be some upgrades. There could be an opportunity to just keep things beyond the middle of the road. Status quo was not the case. And so here we are 7 to 8 years later, and we're still there.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one further item before adjournment, and that is there's one person signed up for public comment. Terry Thomas, please.
Excuse me, misunderstanding. We understood that we was going to be presented. Public TV was going to, People TV from the administration was going to make a presentation, and we were going to be able to ask questions and engage Mrs. Katrina. And now she just walks out, and you saying that only one person want to speak? No, we've been waiting around here to ask questions that need to be asked, Mr. Mascott. And we need to do better than that. I mean, what's going on?
So there's only one person who is signed up to speak.
I signed up.
If I can interject here.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, we just got a lengthy response from the administration about kind of where things stand. Obviously, the council members here have a lot of questions. There's only 4 of us here out of the 15. They're also going to have questions. You all have questions, comments, and concerns. We're absolutely not going to get this straightened out.
Thank you. Well, we just want to ask the
today.
questions.
I hate to hear myself say these next couple words, but we're going to have a work session on this. We're not going to get this straightened out today.
I agree.
Okay, well, yeah, we would just like to ask some questions on the record. It's only been 2 questions asked. You said a lot of questions you all have. We only had
Well, first of all,
2 questions.
as regards today's agenda, there's no work session here. There should be nothing that gives anyone any impression that we were having a work session or a public hearing today.
Well,
So I don't know where that comes from.
Mr. Mascott, we came here in order to have be a part of this presentation, and normally, and Mr. Shook know this, Mr. Young know this, and Ms. Shepherd know this, that when presentations are made, citizens have a right and have been traditionally engaging and asking questions to them. Now, if she can come up and we can ask some questions, we'll be
Shakir,
satisfied.
Mr. Shakir, I stand corrected. You did
Thank you.
sign up, and so we will allow
Thank you,
you
sir.
to speak 2 minutes. at
Mr.
the end of the-
Mazzachyte, before you do that in public hearing, because I may have to slip out, I'm sorry. But I have 2 other things I'd like to add to our list of goals for the year. One of them we had missed, and one of them was the utility service program that we talked about at our last work session. So we want to add that back to the list. Santana, you have that, the utility service program, just having Commissioner Powell give us a report on the yay or nay as to their recommendation in terms of this program. And then the last thing is that we just talked about was this People TV issue, and I would recommend we do have a work session on that. So that's where we are. That's the only thing I would add. Thank you.
My name is Carl. I'm Terry Thomas. On behalf of the teachers, NEA, education, happy Black History. Okay? Now, in terms of People TV, I came aboard with Adrienne Coleman when she asked, as an artist, an advocate for Black American education. That was in 2012. Now, as I watched this process last month, in which, let's just say, a rush some would say bum rush, was given to a PR firm versus a public access. There's a different dichotomy between public access and PR. I also listened as the previous speaker did an act of intellectual trapeze by not mentioning the name of D. Jones. So, where we are, is it going to be for the people, or is it a PR firm? And I just wanted to say that Maynard Jackson was very gifted and insightful in terms of looking out for the poor people or the masses. I would hope that this administration would follow suit. Thank you. Asante Sana.
Thank you. Patricia Creighton.
Patricia Creighton, I do have some questions. I actually spoke with the person that you awarded the bid to, and she doesn't have a building. She has no idea of the actual things that have to be done in order to the server. The cost of the server in and of itself is over $80,000. That's when we got it over 15, 20 years ago. So I'm sure the cost has increased. My question is, if in the timeline, the 45 days that Ms. Parks specified, things have not been put in place, then what? And that's my question. Also, I would like to see more support. If you have a work session, are we going to be included in that? I mean, as the present server of the channel, are we going to be included in that to know what to do? And then again, we are broadcasting over Google Fiber. And I understand that you guys have given Google Fiber a building to operate out of and store and whatever they need to do. And they have been, they, like I said, came over and hooked up stuff with us. So we are broadcasting over them too. What happens to that? And as a board that the city created, are you going to leave us in our present capacity to operate in other ventures, because we can and we have ways to continue? So in the whole ideal of it, so we just need some answers, some clarification of it. And frankly speaking, I don't care how they try to break it down. This is not justice. And as the people being served in Atlanta, we need justice for everybody to keep our voice heard. And another thing, how much time I got? Oh, I'm sorry. This feels like if you give this to her and she's not qualified to keep it going on, and that's one of the stipulations in the contract with Comcast, they will take the channel back. So I'm thinking you setting us up to fail to take our channel back.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Shakir.
Yes, thank you, Brian Shakir. We really haven't got a good understanding on this, and that's unfortunate because it reflects ability of the fact that we're not paying attention and that we really may not even care. But the truth of the matter is, when Ms. Parks come up here and states about what audit and what the city, what the People TV has not provided, this council, Ms. Shepard, and other members of this utility meeting, you understand, have not required that the audit that other states have provided that has come in a franchise fee has actually been corrected correctly, and where has that money gone? This council and the chairperson here and some of the ones that was at part of that, Mr. JB, that they did not perform what Ms. Parks was told what was going to be expected of her. She was told by this chair, who was paying attention, that we want to know about the finances that has been directed to People TV or to collect it for the purpose of public access. That has not been done. The fact is that this situation, this process has been rushed. The question has been raised that who she has been working for, which seems more like a PR firm for elected officials. I'm not the one who try to throw shade on corruption, because most of the time it's African Americans who are criminalized in their places of life. But to have a process in this department that impacts upon public access, that evaluates the concerns of the community, that impacts them, and is like no other. Citizens who can't come down here, who want to come down here, they can come to People TV and they can talk, they can get training. To shut that down with somebody who seems more like a PR firm with all the questions and the speed in which this thing has run. Mister, I'm going to sit down on this here. If you look at what Mrs. Taylor tried to say, we did it twice. Well, you did it twice in a rush, and the first time you did it in a rush, the second time you did it even faster. I asked you, like I did a couple weeks ago, to look at this process in the last 2 months of this administration, and please, you will have questions, and if you don't, I would like to know why you don't have them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shakir. Adrian Coleman Taylor.
Yes, I come back today just to say thank you, and I hope that you will, that this committee will proceed to a work session around this issue. I'm not trying to go backwards, because we can, because I do think that if you check the legislation, there was a legislative framework for public engagement and public access, and my deepest concern is that we're losing that. But let's go forward. Council voted. You passed 17R 4674. The question is, okay, what's next? What's the details? How do you proceed with that? As you can hear from the public, there's questions around this transition. There has been a 30-year organization called People TV. And despite what the administration said, because I know there's audits and all that, we don't have to get into that. The question is, you approve this legislation, how do we get to the next steps? And there's lots. There's People TV. They have questions in terms of what is the transition. The administration didn't say today, when does it start? What is this transition plan? There's lots of questions. The stakeholders I'm here to represent, I'm not on the board of People TV, I'm here as a constituent. I also am an advocate for public access. I know that in my heart that the RFP and the results that we got was because the process was not, is based on, the quality out was the quality in. Okay, so I'm not here to ridicule the winning proponent, but to Mr. Young's point, this budget says $151,000 is personnel fee, and that in 2018 their goal of raising funds is $25,000. Ms. Taylor Park said that she's going to give you this proposal. Please, I would ask you that you voted for this. I hope that you would do due diligence and review the winning proponent. I would also ask that RFP did not include anything about ADA requirements. I think that's a huge miss that procurement did. I know for a fact that at People TV, every month they have a open house for people who are interested. It averages between 600 to 700 people a year that come to People TV to say, I want part of this. And a large part of those are wheelchair-bound people who want to produce. Please, if you do nothing, please support the work session, and also please review this for ADA compliance and how we can support and be inclusive with people with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Johnny Natson.
Johnny Knutson. I'm a constituent of, I'm an end user of public access, I'll say. I have to just say that there's quite a lot of, misinformation. I think you all really, Ms. Shepard said that you all went through this extended process. Really, you all didn't do anything. You did not do your due diligence. There were no work sessions. There were no public input. The administration talked about someone they had to, do an assessment or what have you. Where is that? Where can we see those things? There are a couple of things tied together. All of this came about because of the franchise agreement. The franchise agreement for the cable company that runs the right of way. You can't give a commercial entity access to the right of way without providing for the public access to that same right of way. In this, instance, we're talking about television. Okay, so here, we can see that there's shrinking opportunities for the public to make comment. That's what public access is. It provides that opportunity for constituents like myself, for people who are wanting to get into the fray of television, which is, in television and film is a big industry here in Atlanta. So this is one of the first points that regular people have an opportunity to get in and get their feet wet in the industry if they want to. But it's also, the major part of it is the aspect of public comment and having citizens have their ability to weigh in on what you all are doing here in these meetings, whether it's committee meetings or the full council meeting. With 2 minutes and 3 minutes at a time, there's really no way that a constituent can have a cogent conversation with you all about whatever their concerns might be. That the public access system is the means by which constituents can get on the same platform. You all have 26. 24 is for the public. You all can't control them both. And the two things that I mentioned, the franchise agreement gave Comcast the right to collect a PEG fee, public educational and government access fee. That fee, evidently in the first, the original agreement, allowed them to recoup that $500,000 or whatever it was. But they collected it for the full entire 7 years or whatever it is. So there needs to be some auditing on not only the franchise agreement and those funds, but the PEG funds, which when you look at your Comcast bill, there is every fee, it tells you what the fee is for. And when you look at that fee, it's for public educational and government programming. That's what that money is for. And I'm sorry you guys have allowed me to go over a lot, but this is a real big subject. I know it may not seem like that, but there are a lot of misinformation by the administration. You guys listen to the lawyers come down and you just accept whole cloth what they say. It doesn't appear that you go in any deeper to make certain that what they're telling you is accurate. And that's what we want. We would like this work session. We'd asked for it before all of this came about. We'd asked for the work session, the opportunity for the public to engage so that we can really see what Atlanta needs in terms of public access for its citizens. And that's all we're asking for.
Thank you for those comments. Appreciate it. Sure. Mr. Young?
We're citizens who have actually been elected to represent, and more times than not, we are heavily reliant on subject matter experts to not only engage us, advise us, instruct us on the best practice, not only what they do, whoever comes before us, but what we should do. And so ultimately, it's the outcry that I've consistently heard is we need your help. We need your support. And the most pressing question, whenever I've been asked that question, is what do you need and why? And so, some of that requires some due diligence on the part of the subject matter experts to properly advise us, engage us, instruct us to better perfect what you all do and what we do. But I never hear about, all of these alternative sources to help fund, to help in this restoration, this transformation of public television. It's always a finger pointed at us, give us this, provide for us this, rather than this is what we need and this is how we're accountable to help respond to our own needs. And matter of fact, we're so accountable that here's the record. Here's the record of how every dime that we've received, how it's been used. And so this is just what we've received, both publicly and privately. You know, at the federal level, we're spiraling in chaos right now because we don't have balanced budgets at the federal level. You know, what would the narrative be if you all were to come down here to this city and we weren't able to balance our budgets, that we weren't able to show some proper accountability on our sources, you know, to keep government moving. So if we're going to keep public television moving in the positive direction, it will be 100% of the time the subject matter experts that deal with public television on a daily basis that have the responsibility to be the good shepherds and good stewards of its operations. Educate us, inspire us. You know, we're not a difficult sell, but